A juvenile facility in Louisiana accused of violating the civil rights of minors. Now, advocates and families are speaking out.
He's basically being housed like a death row inmate.
Right now, he's been in 24-hour solitary.
NBC News, ProPublica, and the Marshall Project conducted a 4-month-long investigation into the Acadiana Center for Youth in St. Martinville. What critics call a child prison run by Louisiana's Office of Juvenile Justice, or OJJ.
We're told not many people have seen it, so we will see how this goes.
So we're not able to see or...
No, ma'am. I'm sorry.
We've never been inside, but obtained exclusive video from a former St. Martinville staff member. And what we've heard is disturbing.
His nose is bleeding. There's blood all over the floor. Being beat up right now.
According to OJJ incident reports and firsthand accounts, the 24-cell juvenile facility held minors in cells for 23 or at times 24 hours a day, subdued teens with police-style maneuvers, and at times held minors in shackles or what the facility calls leg irons outside their cells. According to the OJJ, most of the juveniles are black. St. Martinville also failed to provide education to minors for at least 3 months.
We were working to get that established the entire time. That was not something that we were just being negligent on. All of the things that we are providing them by law are on board now.
But those who've been inside say conditions are unacceptable. Rashad, a black 16-year-old, is one of them. This is his lawyer.
I believe that the conditions under which he was being confined violated his rights.
We're using Rashad's middle name to protect his identity. He was moved to St. Martinville last summer.
He was not receiving the substance abuse counseling that had been ordered by the court.
The judge immediately ordered he be removed from the facility. But today, there are still youth at St. Martinville, like 16-year-old Ben. This is his bedroom. He hasn't been in it for 2 years.
Do you have access to school right now?
No, ma'am.
Ben was sentenced to state custody in 2020 and moved to St. Martinville in December.
Even worksheets? Nothing to do at all? No school at all?
Sometimes, I only got them once.
There are no teachers? You haven't seen any teachers there?
No.
The treatment of these youth violates widely accepted standards for juvenile detention. Ben's mother, Rebecca McDonald, says she wasn't informed her son had been moved to St. Martinville for 3 weeks. When she finally heard his voice,
And he would be crying. And my son is not that type of person, so I knew something was up. They treat them like dogs.
Louisiana's Juvenile Justice Reform Act Implementation Commission also says they were not formally notified about the facility.
It was opened in a shroud of secrecy
Until advocates raised the issue.
The OJJ declined multiple requests to tour the facility and denied account of extended solitary confinement and use of shackles outside cells. The OJJ called the facility a, quote, temporary fix used for youth who are, quote, not therapy ready.
We don't have the facilities nor the manpower to hold them in those dormitory settings.
But a former St. Martinville staff member whose identity has been concealed disagrees and called out staff treatment of minors.
A lot of them lack basic respect. They treat those kids like crap. One guy got in trouble for pepper spraying one of those kids. Really think that this facility is the worst possible thing as it runs now.
There are at least 31 youth who have been through the facility. On at least 2 occasions, youth harmed themselves, with multiple instances of minors escaping.
In the case of Rashad, his guardian remains concerned about his mental well-being since release. Ben remains in the facility, now facing new charges. His mother hoping for his release or transfer.
But does he have aspirations, beyond what he's got himself into?
He used to. I don't know if he's...
These kids are going to Angola now. I know it's kind of inconvenient for their families, but maybe it's a good deterrent for them. Hopefully it's a rehabilitation for them. They'll get the chance to see that this could be their future.
Terrence Fizel has been living in Bridge City for most of his life. Sadly, his backyard has now become part of the escape route for youth escaping the jail.
Well, kudos to the governor for doing it now. But like I said before, it's kind of too little too late because now we have victims.
It's a step in the right direction.
It's a sentiment the councilman of that area of Bridge City, Dino Bonanno, shares.
I remain a skeptic because there's been so many broken promises made over the last year. For instance, they were supposed to fix holes in the fence. They had purchased some new high technology motion detection system would let them know if somebody escaped. And we were supposed to bring in more guards and more police.
But those who advocate for the rights of juveniles say it's a step that may cause more harm than good for the youth.
I'm deeply concerned about this decision. It flies in the face of everything we know about keeping kids safe and providing the rehabilitation and education that kids are entitled to.
In fact, Rachel Gassard with the Louisiana Center for Children's Rights says the move would be in violation of federal and state law.
It will be virtually impossible for them to keep the sight and sound separation that is required under federal law, including the Federal Prison Rape Elimination Act.
Still, all can agree that something needs to be done. Fizel says his hopes are what they've always been.
If you bring these violent criminals back into a neighborhood, these are the type of things that can happen. And I'm hoping that in the near future that they will close this place up for good.
In Bridge City stood together outside the front entrance of the Bridge City Youth Center.
There's one thing that's clear to me. The people here have unity. The people here have unity.
About 20 people showed up to protest Governor Edwards' decision to send some of the youth to Angola, a decision the governor made Tuesday. Justice advocates say youth should not be housed in an adult facility, period.
The majority of the children incarcerated are Black and brown young people, and it's completely outrageous to then further traumatize these young people whose families have been seeking support and services to now move them to a plantation.
Eleanor Tabone sat down with experts who say the governor's decision will have adverse effects on those youth.
Some of the youth from here, Bridge City Youth Center, are being transferred to the Louisiana State Penitentiary, also known as Angola, a maximum security prison some consider the toughest, bloodiest prison in America.
There are studies that youth in adult facilities result in worse outcomes.
Federal law requires incarcerated youth be held separately from adult inmates. The governor said this law will be followed, but the question criminal justice advocates are asking is how it'll be done.
We do not believe that it will be possible for the kids to be completely separated from the adults at Angola.
Rachel Gassard from the Louisiana Center for Children's Rights fears the only way that's going to happen is by keeping kids in solitary.
They can't see them, they can't hear them, and that is going to be very difficult in a prison that is entirely run by the people who are incarcerated there. They virtually can never leave the building that they're being held in.
If we respond that quickly, I think we should also respond with building programs that will help them be successful once they return to their communities.
Clinical assistant professor at Tulane University, Reggie Parquet, says if the governor can build a 12-foot fence around Bridge City, he can implement rehabilitative programs for the youth there and those held at Angola.
They will be returned to a juvenile facility. They will be angrier. They're going to be more interested in lashing out.
Aside from the legal concerns, just as a policy decision, we have this whole history in Louisiana of moving towards reform away from the adult correctional model, and this is a giant step backwards.
Hector Linares, professor in youth justice at Loyola University, says youth with non-violent offences should be held in community-based settings.
That would free up resources, that would free up personnel to give the attention to the higher needs youth.
Eleanor Tabone, Eyewitness News.